It is impossible to read through one of the Gospels in its entirety without recognizing that one of Jesus' major thrusts in his ministry was that of healing. We can't interpret it symbolically. We can't interpret it. I don't believe we can interpret it in any other way than that people that were suffering mentally became in his presence whole. People that were suffering from physical maladies became with his touch whole. We don't really explain it, but it's very difficult to interpret it away, nor would I personally try to. The 9th chapter of John's Gospel is a beautiful illustration of Jesus' healing. And I think one of the beauties to it is this, that the Pharisees meet with Jesus and try to explain it away, try to trap him about it. His own disciples want to know, in regard to this blind man, who sinned, he or his forefathers? And Jesus simply gets on with the task before him and gives a sightless man the ability to see. I'm going to read certain portions of this 9th chapter. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, the man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be made manifest in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. For night comes when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. As he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle and anointed the man's eyes with clay, saying to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar said, is not this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said, it is he. Others said, no, but he is like him. He said, I am the man. They said to him, then how were your eyes open? And he answered, the man called Jesus made clay, anointed my eyes, and sent me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. And they said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. And then for the second time, the Pharisees called to the man who had been born blind and said to him, give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner, this Jesus. And he answered, whether he is a sinner, I do not know. For one thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see. And they cast the man out, and Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered, and who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who speaks to you. He said, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him. May God add his blessing to this, the reading on his holy word. The sermon of the morning was written 300 yards above the surface of the Pacific Ocean, overlooking some rocks and little tide pools, taking time in between my jottings to look at the waves. The sermon of the morning is something that I've wanted to share with you. I've not heard many sermons on the subject. The title in the bulletin is not a misprint. The title of the sermon is The Humor Dimension. And I want to begin with 4 little vignettes And I hope as we go along, you'll see the relationship between them. When I was at Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois, in my second year of school, there was a young lady that I had spent quite a number of months getting up courage to invite to go out with me. Her name was Gail. And she did go with me on a date to a movie. And we went out for a soda afterwards and talked for a time, and I took her home. And I squeezed her hand goodnight, and had a feeling that she also squeezed back, although I wasn't sure. I was shy, to say the least at that time, and a tad naive. When I returned to the fraternity house, I told my best friend Ed that I'd had a really wonderful time, and Gail was a really super girl, but that I just really wasn't sure how well she had enjoyed herself. And he took all that in and listened to me. Well, the next morning, which was Sunday morning, I was awakened from sleep, and someone came and got me, and there was a delivery man at the door, someone I had never seen before. And he had a flower for me and a note, and it was from Gail. And the note said that, "Dear Bill, I just wanted you to know that I had a really nice time last night, and I hope you do call again." Well, I was thrilled, just really super thrilled. And so I called her, and I said, "Gail, that was a really thoughtful thing to do. Thank you for sending me the flower." And she said to me, "I wouldn't do a dumb thing like that." And I went on, and I said, well, thank you for the note." And she said, "I didn't write a note." And overhearing my telephone call was my best friend. And I hung up the receiver, and he was laughing uncontrollably. And I was extremely angry, feeling at that time that there really weren't that many other fish in the sea. And then I began to laugh. And it was one of those kinds of laughter where tears come, and your sides begin to hurt, and you double over with hurt. And there is about it a cleansing. Vignette number 1. Vignette number 2, 8 years ago, in a funeral chapel in Peoria. A woman that I had come to know, 55 years of age, had lost her husband. At the end of the meditation, I looked her squarely in the eye and I said this: "Olive, there are 2 doors that lead from this funeral chapel. One door is a door of resentment, a door of bitterness, a door that says, why did this have to happen to me? A door that shuts one off from other people. And then there's a second door. It's a door that lives out the legacy, the very finest things that you can distill out of your husband's love and life. It's a door that opens your life to others, recognizing the brevity and the preciousness of life." In the last 8 years, Olive has spent time, a host of time, both professionally and as a volunteer, with juvenile boys in the city of Peoria, serving as a house mother. She's learned a great deal from them. She's learned their ways. She's learned their tricks. She's fixed them pie. She's probably become mom to about a third of the juveniles in central Illinois. This winter she broke her arm. I saw her and she said to me, "I really have to get better. I have to get back to my boys." And she laughed, and I laughed. And then there was a silence, and she said to me, "I believe 8 years ago I chose
the right door. Vignette number 2. 4 years ago, in talking to 2 very close friends who had just lost their positions with a social service agency in Peoria, lost their positions in a very upsetting way, tremendous amount of hostility. They were both very capable people. It was very much of a political kind of severance for them. And the evening was spent in talking about how they were going to get an attorney, and they were going to sue the institution. And we talked about what they would be choosing for themselves in taking that action. And they shared with me their feelings of a need for revenge, for exposing the hypocrisy of the institution, and also the possibility of financial settlement in their behalf. And we talked then about what that might mean for the next 6 or 8 months of their lives. And they shared with me, and we talked together about how that would mean reliving the whole mess. We talked about how their own emotions would be tied into this. We talked about the possibility of not winning a thing. And then, in the very end of the evening, we talked about how they might spend the next 6 months, how they might smell the flowers and plant a garden and get on with life and shake the dust from their shoes. And after that night, I never heard the suit mentioned again. A young girl in Bunker Hill who had received Jesus Christ and become a Christian. She never seemed to smile after that point. She always seemed very serious. She separated herself from others. Her life was filled with judgment of other people. There was about her a heaviness, a kind of preparing for the final end of things, a certain gloom. I talked with her about the Jesus that she had found and shared with her that somehow I'd found a different Jesus. End of the vignettes. Red Skelton, Woody Allen, Bob Hope. The humor, the wit, the joke.
In the moments of concern of the morning. Some of you had mentioned last week that it's difficult for you still to hear me from this microphone, so we'll try to keep this up a little bit higher. And the note has to do with someone's birthday. Many, many famous people are born in the month of January. And the closer you get to the end of the month of January, the more famous they become. And this morning, a dear member of our congregation.
He's on the basketball team, and he has a really good sense of humor. Thinking about a sense of humor as a nice addition to a well-rounded personality, I'm talking about something deeper than that. It is this, but something deeper. Do you see it? One of my conversations while in Portland, talking to the minister, Lincoln Reed, of our First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ, in downtown Portland. Talking to me about one of the women that he has known in the congregation for 10 years. A very strong laywoman that has served as the lay woman or lay head of the church, dying of cancer. He told me of this conversation in her hospital room. Barbara, why am I laughing? when you are lying there dying, and this woman, living a full and rich life, saying to him, "Oh, Lincoln, there's a lot to laugh about." That's the kind of depth I'm talking about. You can't go much deeper than that. A sense of humor down in the deepest places of the warp and the whoop of one's life. To see little green threads running through what others see as a landscape of black. To see little streaks of blue sky while all others see darkness and foreboding. Jesus of Nazareth, not the jokes recorded in the New Testament, in the Gospels, not the anecdotes that we would find about the life of Abraham Lincoln, but to read the Gospels is to sense the buoyancy of the man's life, the facility for getting on with it. Let's heal the man. Let's not talk about who sinned. Let's celebrate his healing. Let's not talk about whether it was done in the Sabbath or not. Life is good. I get that message from his life. I have come, he said, I have come that you may have life and that you may have it abundantly. His prayer that we might find the fullness of joy. And then going back into the Old Testament and catching up for a minute with that man Jeremiah. All of the people of Jeremiah's dear, dear people, the children of Israel being huddled up and taken into captivity in Babylon, taken out of their land, closing their houses, being herded into captivity. The last thing that Jeremiah does, what does he do? He buys a field. He buys a field right there. And I've always interpreted that as a tremendous act of faith. Jeremiah saying, as you go down the road into captivity in Babylon, you put waymarks along the way. You mark it because we're coming back. Because God's going to bring us back to this land. But I also see in it an unbounding and unreasonable, almost a ludicrous kind of winsome, humorous, marvelous thing to do. To buy a field, a kind of a craziness, a beautiful craziness, to buy a field. When everyone else sees only despair and gloom, hopelessness. When I do not take myself so seriously, I can take life seriously. When I do not take myself so seriously, I can take life seriously. When my own life is not filled with resentment and depression and hostility, when it does not become a cauldron of negative feelings, then I can take life seriously. When I do not take myself so seriously, I can take life seriously. What is involved in taking life seriously? To recognize that it's brief, it's precious, and it's punctuated with grace. One time I entered the church of my boyhood youth, and the minister said he was going to speak on the subject from a text that catches all of the Old Testament and all of the New Testament into one short verse. And the verse was this: I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you. What is involved in taking life seriously? It's to recognize that it's brief, that it's precious, and that it's punctuated with grace. Those who live life in touch with the humor dimension, what do? Do they move blasely through life, not taking anything very seriously, never really having much impact on society? I have found the opposite to be true. I have found within those persons a balance to life, a kind of focusedness to life, so in touch with those elements that make for life that they can see with equal clarity those elements that are destructive to life. and need to be addressed. So in touch with the divine that they can perceive the satanic at work. The kind of thing that we read about several weeks ago happening at the plant, for example, in Peoria at Pabst. People hating to go to work, drinking themselves to sleep, dreading going to work the next morning. That is satanic. That is satanic. I like to think about the power of humor. One time, several years, my wife and I don't argue anymore, but a few years ago we did. And one time we were in the midst of a rather grand argument. And her father got into the argument and the unpainted back fence, and there was just a whole lot of elements in the argument. And the tension was building between us, and all of a sudden I started to laugh. I started to laugh, and she froze in front of me. And I said, Joan, I said, I fell asleep last night, crying, because I love you so much. And she received that, she heard that. And we held each other, and life was good again. I'm saying there's a power. There's a power in humor. There's a power in it. I'm saying that it's not certain people that are born with a nice sense of humor, a good, quick wit. I'm saying that humor can be cultivated. I'm saying that when I'm feeling dark and morose, I use that feeling as a signal to say to myself, I don't have all the returns in yet. I know that life is not this dark and morose, so I don't have all the returns in. Sometimes to get the returns in, I go out into nature. One time when I was up in the Glenelg, Wheaton, Lombard area living, I felt this way. I felt down and dark and morose, and I went out to one of my favorite places, Morton's Arboretum, a beautiful setting, tremendous amount of natural vegetation, trees, examples of different kinds of trees growing in different parts of the world there. And I found this little open place with a couple trees and a little fence beside it, and just sat there and thought. And it was cool. It was the latter part of October, and here were these crows going back and forth, flying this field and eating some corn, coming back, sitting on a tree. And I cried out to them at the top of my lungs, how can you be carrying on like this when Bill Fairbank is so depressed? And when I shouted out like that, they began to fly more furiously, and they seemed to call more loudly, and it didn't seem to make a bit of difference to them. And I laughed myself. And I thought to myself, I didn't have all the returns in. I didn't know that these crows were having such a good time at Morton's Arboretum. But now I do. I'm saying it's getting all the returns in. And when we're feeling that dark and we're feeling that low about life, we don't have all the returns in. Well, secondly, I've learned to ask myself if a particular course of action is going to be more life-restricting than life-giving. Is a particular course of action going to be more life-restricting or life-giving? Thus, vignette number 3. Do we need to show the world? Do we need to get revenge? What's that going to do to us in the process and in the meantime, you see? And to be able to say, I don't have to do that. That's not going to be good for me. And thirdly, to recognize that there's a child within each one of us. A child within each one of us. And it needs time every day. What is it that you love to do? What is it that gives you life? Is it reading? Is it cycling? Is it talking to dear friends? What is it that you need to do? And then a very eminent psychologist says, once you've identified it, do it for at least an hour and a half a day, preferably 3 hours. Do we do that? Do we take that time for ourselves that gives us life? Be with people. Be with people that add a lightness to life and a life to your life. Sometimes if you are feeling really down, try to isolate what friends there are in your life that add lightness and life to life. And you may find that in where you are right now, you're surrounded by 6 or 8 people that are very close to you that are just simply pulling you down because they're down. So to broaden. And fourthly, I don't know what this means. Something told me to put it in. And that is, at times, do the outlandish. Fourthly and finally, this is the end of the sermon. At times, do the outlandish. You can identify with that story from Millikan University and Gale. You can identify with that. But can you identify with it in the last week, or the last 3 or 4 months, or the last 20 years? Can you identify with a time when you've laughed so hard you've cried, when you've doubled over because your sides have hurt so much? And I'm saying that if we can't identify that, then we've missed some of the cleansing and some of the power of this gift from God.